Good morning and welcome to Conversations with Annassa. So happy to be here with you. Very honored to be in your presence. Welcome. So let's start with meditation. Take your attention inside, and we'll start at the very bottom with the star garden chakra or the garden star chakra. Breathe into that space where your energy field meets the dirt. Now, as you breathe into that space, drop your attention between the breaths. Feel into that silent stillness. It may not be silent for you. Still, feel into that stillness. In between the breaths. And you can feel for it both on the in-breath, before you exhale, and then on the out-breath, after you exhale. See if you can hold your attention in that space. Now allow your attention to rise up to the tip of your tailbone and feel into the space between the breaths. Hold your attention there as you breathe. If you feel some restriction, just keep breathing into it and allow it to expand. If it gets tighter, allow that. We are beings of expansion and contraction as waves of energy flow through us. When you're ready, allow your attention to rise to just below the belly button. Feel into that energy center and drop your attention into the space between the breaths. And feel. Gently allow your attention to rise to your solar plexus, just below your rib cage, right where the V is, at the bottom of your ribs. Breathe into that space and feel into the space between the breaths. Now take your attention into your heart center. Breathe into the space between the breaths and drop your attention there. Gently allow your attention to rise to your throat center. Breathe into that center and drop your attention between the breaths. Gently allow your attention to rise to your third eye, behind and between your eyebrows in the center of your head. Breathe into that space. And feel for the stillness between the breaths. As you're ready, allow your attention to come to the top of your head. Feel for the opening of the 1,000-petaled flower at the top of your head, receiving pranic plasma, the healing substance from the stars. Allow it to permeate every cell of your body as you feel into the stillness between the breaths at the top of your head. At this moment, allow everything that doesn't serve the highest to drop away. And now allow your attention to rise to the point where your aura, if you made a halo around your head, the point where your fingers touch is where the energetic center is. Take your attention there and feel into the space between the breaths. And now allow your attention to circulate on the in-breath. On the in-breath down and on the out-breath up. in your central channel. When you're ready, allow your attention to come into the screen, and we'll begin to communicate in a different way. Thank you. That was quite beautiful. How may we serve today? We welcome your questions. We're a little bit quiet, so we can feel you are too, and that's totally fine. Yes, Suzanne. We can't hear you yet. There you go.
Now we're on.
There you are.
Just reviewing some notes from some weeks back. There was a conversation about being more involved with angelic beings, and I would like to pursue that a little bit more. How to maybe have some awareness of those beings that are assigned to me. I guess that's the proper word. And how to connect with them in some ways. That's possible.
Yes, it is possible. So the state that we just went into of meditation,
Mm-hmm.
it takes that working with your own mechanism to be in that space of openness, that stillness between the breaths. From that space, you can ask to be informed about your connection to the best way to phrase the connection, uh, to phrase the question is, ask to be informed about what serves your connection to the highest.
Mm.
so that there's no limitation in the question. You don't want to just be informed about angelic beings. You want to be informed about anything that serves your connection to God or divinity. And this divinity is personal and impersonal at the same time. And so when you ask, you are asking really to become your highest self. And the, how do we say this? Holding that intention is what magnetizes to you the information that is appropriate to the access to your own blueprint in this moment to bring you into the highest within yourself. And so to limit the question to angelic information may be doing yourself a disservice. So we want you to ask the unlimited, please inform me as to my highest purpose and alignment with the highest. And this is unlimited, but at the same time, very personal. And so it combines the personal with the impersonal absolute.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I'll work on it. Thank you.
You're welcome, because it's important how we phrase our intention as we relate to the highest, because very often we will ask for situational help.
Right.
And then if we don't get the answer we want, we say, okay, it doesn't work, it doesn't exist. And, but our request for information is very time-based in that situation. It's very three-dimensional. But if we can make our request so that it is a request to merge with the absolute, to understand what and who we are here, then that is about expansion, which is really how we find our highest, is in allowing ourselves to receive that which we don't understand.
Okay.
So very often we try to limit our interaction with the divine to our own understanding. And that, in a way, is imposing a kind of control on what it is we seek. And when we're seeking the infinite, to try to control it is very human, but impossible.
Right.
And so when we ask for the infinite, we don't always understand what we get back, because very often the answers are in the energy itself. And so as we deepen our exploration of what that is in our meditation, then the energetic answers become not so much related to three-dimensional language, because that is our limitation in our mind. Our mind is limited to three-dimensional language as long as we take that as our reference point, which is what our matrix of belief is. Our matrix of belief is that we are limited by that which we can name. The truth is that's an arbitrary limitation that we have imposed on our interpretation of reality, and limited that interpretation to our matrix of belief, which is language based. Can you see how that's a very low ceiling
Yes.
when you're talking about infinity? So when we meditate, we are cultivating the experience of that which is beyond. language. And so we can't exactly expect our answers to come in three-dimensional language.
Right.
They do over time. Over time, there is this filtering down that our understanding so much of this does not go into English. It's very, very, very hard when we start to talk about infinity from the perspective of three-dimensional language. So there is this cultivation of an allowing, and the logic, there is a logic to love itself, but it's not linear. And it's what we experience when that flower opens at the top of our head. That is the access to beyond three dimensions. Actually, our whole body can access it in different layers of each energy center, but this is one that's quite palpable when it opens. And it allows in a different kind of flow, which begins to inform us in a sort of visceral way about our connection to God herself. Does that answer your question?
Gives me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yes. You're so welcome. How may we serve further?
We have a question in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please talk about what it's like not to have time in other dimensions, or how we have the illusion of time and how we can keep it from limiting our experience?
The reason we have time is because our bodies are finite. And so we have decided from our third dimensional perspective, from our matrix of belief, that our lifespan has that our bodies have diminishing returns over time. This is a belief system that we hold as part of our third dimensional matrix of belief. Part of living outside of time is suspending that belief in the necessity of our degeneration as we age. It is not necessary for us to degenerate, but because we believe that that is the result of time passing, it happens. So that's one of the ways that our sense of time limits our daily experience as it passes. So we wouldn't call this anti-aging. We would call this It's like having depth perception in time. Um, it's not being against aging, it's allowing health, is what it really is. It's as we allow this flow to inform us, and it is flow that contains all the information that we need for connection. And this flow starts with the breath. That's why we do our meditation into the stillness that underlies the breath. Because in this stillness is where we come from and where we will return. And it is the source of everything that exists in our world and every other world for that matter throughout the multiverse. That is the constant, is the stillness.
I threw a lot at you. So the first question was, can you please talk about what it's like not to have time in other dimensions?
Not to have time is to be in the stillness. That is timeless space. This is the experience we are trying to share. How may we serve further?
There's another question in the room. Please share what you think I should know about using essential oils as a way to grow and why they work.
So, not all essential oils are the same. We'll say that to start with. The purification process has everything to do with the power of the plant medicine. So, the extraction process and how it is done is critical to the purity of the essential oil. So, saying you have an essential oil, it is the distillation of the sacred message of the plant. And so, the issue with essential oils is that they are very powerful. because they are the distillation of the sacred message of the plant. And they work in our bodies with a lock and key system that we have with nature in terms of our communication with the plant world. And this exists in contrast to the pharmaceutical industry, which has introduced thousands of chemicals that did not exist prior to pharmacology, that have no resonance or weak resonance with our lock and key system. And so they offer information to our bodies that our bodies have never seen before. And this really started to happen in the 1950s, late 40s, 50s, 60s, and has progressively complicated our environment beyond recognition. Pharmaceuticals and agricultural uh, fertilizers, pesticides, all of these chemicals that have been labeled progress have complicated our environment. And so the plant spirit medicine, which was the one of the really uh, powerful medical systems of indigenous peoples throughout the world, has uh, been relegated to the world of, uh, from the perspective of progress, it's irrelevant. And so it's no longer studied except by people who are interested in aligning themselves with nature. So the first thing we have to say is that essential oils are powerful. And because of that power, they do what they do. And in one person, that can be totally healing. In another person, it can disrupt an ecological balance in their system. So it's very important that we use these things with practitioners who truly understand them, because they have a lot of power. And the more concentrated these essential oils are, and the more pure the extraction process, the more powerful. And so essential oils do have power and need to be respected for that reason, because they can create enormous balance and they can create enormous imbalance if we don't really know what we're doing. So we'll say that. We're not sure that answers your question. Could we hear the question again?
Please share what you think I should know about using essential oils and as a way to grow and why they work. As a way to grow.
So Rebecca is not studied in the use of essential oils uh, as a medical prescriptive or a spiritual prescriptive practice. And really, they need to be approached in that way because of their power. Anything powerful is double-edged. It can create enormous balance and it can create enormous imbalance. This is true of most substances that human beings interact with, especially when they are in their purest sacred context, which we would say that about essential oils. They are a pure sacred context of interaction between a human being and a plant. And so to truly understand them takes a sacred spiritual practice where you journey into the plant spirit and understand its intention in relating to a human being. And so this itself can be an entire spiritual practice, or one that, takes a number of years to become fluent with. But that's how we think about it and would talk about it. We hope that answers your question. How may we serve further? We'll give you an example of what can happen in terms of imbalance. Rebecca had a patient once who brought in doTERRA toothpaste as a gift. And so she thought, oh, how wonderful. And she took it home and started using it several times a day for a few months. And after about 3 weeks, she noticed that her gums were rapidly receding. And they'd never done this before. And so she was racking her brain why this might be happening. And it turns out that the essential oils in the doTERRA toothpaste were interacting with an inflammatory process that she had going on somewhere else in her body, in another organ system, and that was causing this rapid gum recession. And so, naively, she created this imbalance in herself, which actually took a while to really rebalance. So these things can happen, and they can be very dramatic and actually affect our health in ways that we're not aware of. So it's good to learn about essential oils from people who know. And Rebecca's not one of those, but there are a number of people who really know how to use essential oils spiritually. And it's a worthy endeavor for anyone who wants to master that arena. How may we serve further? And it's not our intention to create fear around essential oils. That's not the intention at all. It's just that wise use of essential oils is a spiritual practice itself. We'll say that. How may we serve further? Andrew?
You said something during the meditation. I just wanted to. You said to observe the stillness between the breath, and you said first you said the stillness and the quiet, but you said but it may not be quiet. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, what our experience was as we felt into the stillness was that the sound which we've forgotten the English word for, the sound that comes in the stillness became very, very loud. The om sound, yes, became very loud in the stillness. And so that's what we were speaking to, is the om sound can become, and the sound is like, it's like very high frequency wires. It's kind of a crystalline sound. And it's very alive. And so as we felt into the stillness, that sound permeated everything up here. And so that's why we said it may not be quiet. That was we were actually in the sound. So we're broadcasting that sound for you as we are sitting here. And it's easy to discount it because it's there all the time. So it doesn't feel like anything new. So just allow yourself to experience. Yes?
Is there a greater purpose occurring within the disintegration and disruption of relationships and systems happening currently? Is there a greater purpose occurring within the disintegration and disruption of relationships and systems happening currently?
Well, we can say that there is always a greater purpose of everything that happens in our lives to expand our awareness of the truth of our inner being. This is the purpose of every experience that we have. And we magnetize these experiences to ourselves individually because of the frequencies at which we resonate. And so always the purpose of every experience is deepening and expanding our awareness of divinity. This is the purpose of our lives. And we each have a blueprint that is a living we want to use the word template, but you have to see it not as a flat piece of paper, not even as a three-dimensional structure, but as an unlimited, living, responding it's not a grid, but it is a grid. It's like what we're trying to describe is really karma. Our blueprint has a karmic, how do we say this? Our blueprint is the karmic expression of our lives, and the resonances that we are attracting, and we are all giant receivers and giant transmitters. And so, whatever resonance we are in a given moment attracts to it like resonance, and requests like resonance attracts to it like resonance, requests. So, our breath, our physical breath, is the continuity between the inflow and the outflow of our resonance. And it's why we can really experience the divine in the stillness between each breath, because each breath is a representation of the divine expansion and contraction that is happening all the time. And what we are is a resonance. You could think of a human being as a constellation of resonances that attracts and transmits. And so spiritual growth is aligning our transmission and reception with the highest. And in that alignment, our blueprint is constantly recalibrating itself to match the resonances which we are interacting with and from. And so as we expand or contract, our blueprint is rewriting itself in alignment with our current resonances. We hope that makes sense.
So is that the disruption of the relationships then as our system changes?
That's a bit of an oversimplification. Because our relationships change as we change. Yes, that's true, but they are not necessarily disrupted by our change. as we feel into the multitude of variables, we again struggle for language, because the simplicity of expansion and contraction is really our point. And the attempt to bring that into three-dimensional reality and, the language of matrix of belief, although the process itself of expansion and contraction has a simplicity to it, the multitude of variables that become influenced by any particular expansion and contraction is beyond our ability to communicate in language. Because as we align ourselves with that stillness, again, it's the power. This is the power that empowers essential oils, is the power that powers everything. And it is impossible to express the power of this connection through a life in changing the interactions with the whole as we deepen our own practice. It's so hard to put this into language because inner spiritual practice and alignment with divinity is so powerful, it is beyond words, because it puts us in touch with that which is beyond all experience, which is the source of all experience, which is the power of life itself, which is beyond our capacity to articulate in third dimensional language, because life itself contains everything. And we, as expressions of life itself, at our essence, contain every possibility. Now, as that filters through our being into expression, our matrix of belief and our blueprint intersect in their expression. But as we get deeper and deeper in ourselves, our blueprint reorganizes and our expression changes. We hope that answers your question, which we have forgotten by now. Could we hear it again?
Is there a greater purpose occurring within the disintegration and disruption of relationships and systems happening currently? A greater purpose occurring.
So the greater purpose is always deepening our awareness of the divinity at our source. And the true way to alignment is self-love with a capital S. It means that we love the God at our source. We love her with every breath. And with the allowing of that connection, with the reverence for that depth of experience that is available inside every human being, with the cultivation of that is the cultivation of flow. And simply, quite simply, whenever we reject ourselves, we are rejecting God herself. And so the purpose of expanding our breath is the same as expanding our love. And we have not a chance in the entire universe of experiencing love if we can't give it to ourselves. We cannot love another until we love ourselves. And if our matrix of belief could take in that concept and broadcast it to every culture on the earth, our lives would change overnight. They would change in an instant. And it happens from, very, very young. When spilled milk becomes a reason to reject ourselves rather than just, milk sometimes spills. And it is that self-punishment that we're taught by our matrix of belief that separates us from God herself. This is the simplicity of spirituality. When we can love everything that arises in us, which doesn't mean that we don't change our behavior according to our understanding. We still can change our behavior and say, well, that wasn't the highest thing we did in that moment, without rejecting ourselves. We can say that our expression was not the best. We can say it with complete honesty, but we don't have to reject ourselves to make that point. We are taught in our matrix of belief that the only way we make a change for the better is by condemning the current situation. This is not the truth. Condemning ourselves is rejecting God herself. We can say in absolute honesty that we didn't do the best thing. That's being human. We are human. Humans make mistakes. That's okay. Mistakes are how we learn. Yes, mistakes have consequences, but those consequences that are built into the system do not demand, unless it's our matrix of belief, they do not demand self-rejection. Change, yes, we must change as our understanding becomes more wise. And we embrace that with complete gratitude. But we don't have to condemn ourselves for making a mistake. And this is the truth of it. It is that self-acceptance, that self-love that takes us to God, because that's what God herself is, love. There is no judgment in the stillness. How may we serve further? It gives us such great joy to be with you. Mm.
So I remember a year ago when we were caught up in these sessions on Sunday and the questions, there was so much energy in the room around COVID and what was going on politically, and it was certainly a domination of the space. So I'm aware that that seems to have subsided, but are we really moving past all of these things, or are we numb? Like, are we healing, or are we ignoring?
Well, in a way, this is a question that's asking us to predict the future, which we cannot do because there are too many variables. So, as we feel into the system, there is a great fatigue with drama and trauma on the part of the world in terms of COVID. So we agree the conversation has changed, but it's not yet finished. And we cannot predict because every human being has free will and that kind of calculation. So we see the same trends you do. But understand this period of quiet, that many, many people were able to experience as a result of life stopping has reorganized humanity for the better. More people are aware of divinity now by quantum levels compared to a year ago in your time. And it has to do with the stillness that encompassed the planet when life stopped in its busyness for even a short time. Many, many people were able to be quiet for the first time in their lives. They stopped doing just for a minute. And when that happened, the vacuum was filled with love. Whether they experienced it and were able to name it, because we get very confused about love and sexuality and those powerful waves. And although they are related, they are not the same. One is very hormonal and the other one is infinite. And they do meet, but they are not the same. So we hope that answers your question.
Well, is there anything then in this renewed energy of the time that we should be working to feel into to really take advantage of, to drink in?
Well, the first thing is to drink in the miracle of being alive. We are survivors. That is a miracle. Life itself is a miracle. Waking up every day is a miracle. What it takes for life to produce a human being, it's amazing. The odds are slim to none that we would exist. And here we are, thinking, feeling, communicating, energetic beings at our core with a physical body. You know, we forget, because we have a body every day and every moment of our existence, we forget the miracle of it. You know, when a new baby comes into our field, for a moment we remember the miraculous, because that energy in a newborn, any mammal, a newborn has such breath of love as it enters this field. And the same thing happens as a person dies also. The love in that moment is the same as the love in the arrival. It's that we greet one with joy and the other one with grief. We are the ones who shut down. The energy itself doesn't change in those experiences. They are the same, the coming and the going. They are both profound experiences of life loving itself. They are not different, birth and death. It's our matrix of belief that one is a coming and the other is a going. But do we mourn our exhale after our inhale? This is the point of union. And this is true with all comings and goings. There is a point of union. And when we align ourselves in that point of union, then the matrix of belief just disappears because we understand that matrix of belief is about judgment, not about being at one with source, which is what spiritual work really is. Discovering the love within ourselves that is the source of every experience. And when we begin to experience our breath as connection with that source, and we have experiences, the most dramatic of which are birth and death, when we participate in those a few times, we begin to really understand viscerally that they are the same. And then we're free because we're not constantly living in fear of one and running toward the other. We just are, and we can allow ourselves to be and cultivate that depth of awareness that is the common ground of everything that lives. So it looks about time for us to go back into meditation unless there's a further short question that someone has.
There's one.
Go ahead.
Question. Can you say something about all the gun violence lately?
Well, we can say in general that violence is energy that has been, it's like energy that has been contained that can no longer be contained within a person. Anger, usually rage. And the person gets so overcome with rage that they feel the only way that they can be heard, that their rage can be expressed, is to harm others. They lose all hope and act in despair. These are people who have lost faith in love. They don't know love. And you can be assured that every person who dies or is wounded in these situations had that as part of their blueprint coming in. And with that understanding, then we don't have to live in reaction to these experiences, but we can acknowledge the depth of the pain in the person acting and the grief in those left behind and the moving on in those who agreed to be taken in that time. And from that perspective, we need not hold to any particular reaction. As one gets closer and closer to being in the oneness, the idea of influencing the perfection that already exists in moving people toward their highest. The whole logic of love becomes available. And then the only thing to be done is to deepen our own experience of that love, peace, joy, gratitude, and that which is beyond as we begin to experience the wholeness of being. So let's move into our meditation from there. Take your attention inside, and we invite you to visit each of your chakras, your energetic centers, as we enter transmission. So we'll begin our meditation now, and stay silent. We will remain with our eyes open, and you are invited to participate in any way that feels right to you. Take your attention inside, and we'll begin. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Mm. Till we meet again.